Hey everyone, this is Mike Wolf. Welcome to the podcast. Today's show is the audio from what is perhaps my favorite session from Smart Kitchen Summit 2018. It's the session where I got together with some of my favorite journalists on stage and talked to them about how they do their job. We had Joe Ray from Wired, we had Ashley Clark-Thompson from CNET, Wilson Rothman from Wall Street Journal, and Lisa McManus from America's Test Kitchen. And these are folks who I read all the time to understand what they think about new kitchen products. And I thought it'd be great to get them on stage and talk to them about how they're doing their job in an era where increasingly technology is having a say in how consumers cook in the kitchen. I just thought it'd be great. I thought it also would be valuable for people in the audience, folks who make appliances, who make kitchen products, who sell them, to understand what these folks think about and how they go about reviewing these products and what some of their favorite things are and what they hate about some of the new products in the kitchen. So it was a really fun conversation. I hope you enjoy it. Before we start, I want to talk a little bit about CES and how our Food Tech Live event went. It was pretty great. I'm sure many of you who visit the Spoon saw a lot of the coverage we're doing. If you haven't, make sure to go to thespoon.tech. We just had a great time just seeing all these companies in one room and talking to them about their products and, you know, eating great pizza from like world champion pizza chefs. And it was great. So if you haven't checked out the coverage, go to thespoon.tech. Check it out. All right, that's it for now. Let's listen to the podcast. I'm so excited for this panel. We actually have an extra person, so I'm going to grab a stool here. Because I read all of your work, and I'm so appreciative of the hard work it is to review products, and because products are changing so quickly. So I want this panel to talk about those changes and how you guys think about products in the kind of the Smart Kitchen era. But before we do that, I'm just going to quickly go down the line and introduce you. Just say who you are, because I think people know the general publications you work for. We have Joe Ray from Wired, Wilson Rothman from the Wall Street Journal, Lisa McManus from America's Test Kitchen, and Ashley Clark-Thompson with CNET. And what I love about this is like you kind of each have your own lens through which you look at kitchen products. Can you each very briefly kind of explain what Wired's lens is when you look at a kitchen product?
I have a very low threshold for BS, and I think I can see it pretty quickly. I used to cook in a bunch of restaurant kitchens. I write about food all day, and then I go upstairs and I cook dinner because it makes me happy. And if I just start trying to integrate it into whatever that tool is, I usually have it for a month or 2 or 3, and I just start trying to integrate it into my daily pattern. And if it's not working, something's probably wrong, but I also try to think about, how's my mom going to do this? How's my sister, who also has even lower tolerance for BS, like, how's she going to deal with it? How is somebody's grandma going to deal with it? And then somewhere in there, you kind of start to realize what's important and what's not.
Well, so when you look at tech product, kitchen products, what is the lens through which the Wall Street Journal you look at them?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we're not going to be running through every product in a category trying to like assess whether it's, this one gets a 5 and this one gets a 4.5. We're really looking at, or I'm looking at, and my team is looking at what is changing about the way we are in the, spending time in the kitchen. Like, does this device, like for instance, adding Wi-Fi to an immersion circulator seemed at first like a stupid idea, and then I realized, wait a minute, other people don't go to the internet, find out exactly the right time to cook a piece of salmon at the exact temperature. They just want to see a pretty picture of a salmon, click a button, and eureka, the kitchen changed. And so that became something that we covered. But I also, edit a lot. I'm like working a team of people who are all coming up with their own ideas. So there's a lot of discussion. What does this really mean? And more now, is it going to steal your identity when you plug it in, right?
Well, at America's Test Kitchen, I don't know if everybody's familiar with what we do, but we look at a lot of non-technical kitchen products for home cooks. I'm the executive tasting and testing editor, so I do product reviews as well as ingredient taste tests. And we focus on supermarket products, we focus on common cookware, and we do really practical tests to see which one is the best and then try to explain why, try to figure out why. And we really try to not waste people's money or time and get them the products that are going to make them successful in the kitchen. So when I'm starting to incorporate more and more high-tech stuff, smart things, and I think our audience is sophisticated, likes to cook, is somewhat affluent, educated, and they want to know when they should incorporate this technology into their home kitchens.
At CNET, I started mainly reviewing ovens and stoves, and it didn't matter if they were smart or not, but over the years, and now it's been about 3.5 years, we've seen just an emergence of connected products, both large and small. So my role has changed a little bit in terms of the things that I review. I find myself now reviewing more small, smart appliances, and there's definitely a focus with our publication on just the tech aspect of it. The people who read our site, not only are they interested in the latest iPhone or Android phone, but they also want to know, like, oh my God, is this connected? Can I have this connected cooking system and things like that? So we review a lot of products, even, some that we might have seen on a crowdfunding site that made a lot of waves, some things that are interesting, even if they're not connected. But just if there's just something that makes it a little bit different, it's probably in my wheelhouse.
And Lisa, America's Test Kitchen has this brand around reviewing kitchen products. You spend a lot of time with it, but I would imagine, you started to say, you're starting to review more tech-forward products. How has the process changed? Have you guys as a publication, had to say, okay, we have certain standards around types of products we'll review? Talk a little bit about how things have changed.
Well, traditionally, we'll do things like spatulas, and, there's a million spatulas out there. A lot of these products are one of a kind, or one and maybe another one's come down the pike. And so we're looking at these things in isolation sometimes. We're comparing them to the traditional technology. Is this an improvement over the way people currently do things? Is this really practical? Is it really functional? In terms of publishing them, it's been a little bit of a rocky road because we had this happen with the June oven. I reviewed the first generation right as it went into kind of hiatus as they were preparing the second generation, and my review got sat on for a couple months, didn't run. And then the new one came out, and I jumped on it and reviewed it and pushed it through we have a very long process of a lot of fact-checking and various editors, and it's not fast. So we got it out quickly. As soon as I was done with it, I got the whole process to go a little faster than usual because I was frustrated. And we're talking about how this changes our timeline for publishing.
Joe, you said you have this low tolerance for BS. So I feel like I can sense when I read all of your reviews and your writing, I can see when there's appreciation for when maybe innovation makes a product better, but I also sense very quickly when there's annoyance, and probably no more so than with you, Joe. So talk a little bit about...
I'm the annoyed guy.
Yeah, the cranky guy. Talk about some instances of where you've seen products that have integrated technology where you just made it, or you felt it take the product backwards a little bit, or it didn't make the product better at all.
Okay, I've got one. For me, I think this comes from me having cooked in a bunch of restaurant kitchens. I always want to be able to have the primary function of a device be able to be accessed without touching my phone. You and I are going to get along great. If there's an app with it, for instance, I think the app, you can do everything you want on the app, and I think sometimes the app will make things better. But I think and people know me for this, and people definitely disagree with this, but I think you really need to be able to just reach down and turn it on.
What about Alexa integration? What about just yelling at it?
If you want to ask Alexa to make popcorn, I'd have to ask her why it takes longer to ask her to make popcorn than it does to hit the popcorn button.
It's a hot topic this year, making popcorn with Alexa.
So
I've tried. I reviewed a microwave that had it, not the new Amazon microwave, but another microwave that had it, and I really wasn't. To me, that was a step backward.
So, Wilson, you won't oftentimes review a product, I think, if you feel like...
Yes.
yes. I mean, you're pretty discerning in the products you review, right? And you get a lot of pitches. So talk about when you get new kitchen gadgets, for example.
Because we don't have like a fixed weekly like smart kitchen spot in our, in the journal. It's more like, does this rise to is this a topic we should talk about? And is this the example that we've been waiting for? And those are actually two different things. There's a topic that I really want to do a broad look at, but the products I'll tell you, it's steam ovens. I think there's a kind of mass appeal in the steam oven space. Before that, I wrote about smart cooktops, right? And before that, I mentioned the Wi-Fi sous vide. Like these are like moments in the kitchen that change the way people behave. But in between those moments, there have been plenty of nice, fun little boxes arriving at my house with things in them that were, don't get me wrong, some were very fun to use. But they don't rise to that, point of like, this is something that is even going to take off. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Like some of them are just great idea. I'm not going to name names.
But explain them. So there are moments in the kitchen. How do you discern this is a moment when we're seeing maybe a new trend?
There's got to be some convergence. I think if there's multiple parties coming at the same idea from different angles, I mean, smart cooktop is a really good one, and I know some of you in the room actually work on those. But like that seems to be something that's only snowballing now that you've got big appliance makers getting involved with those same software that you saw on smaller, plug-in-the-wall induction cooktops. So that's the kind of thing where you could call the moment because there was multiple people pitching you. I mean, this is basic review 101. If 3 or 4 different people are pitching you an idea you've never heard of and they don't know each other, you're like, I need to get more information about this idea. And then you get them all in, and then you're like, well, this one kind of sucks, but this one's great. So
yeah. So Ashley, CNET is pretty authoritarian. It's
a crazy cultural time. So
authoritative in terms of like your breadth of your reviews. You guys review a lot of things. You actually review a lot of kind of Kickstarter products. So we should take a look at them. So talk about that. As like, there's just so many more products. It's been a democratized world to create hardware. Has that made your job harder? Are you reviewing lots more products that you wouldn't review before?
I think it's made my job a little harder, but more interesting. I will say that. And I think the first time I really saw it for me was the Coolest Cooler. I don't know if you guys remember that, or if they're here. I don't know. Hello, if you are. So it was a cooler that had a built-in blender, and it premiered. It had a Kickstarter campaign, and it raised like $13 million. And so for me, that was the first time that I saw a product that has an appliance component that people were so excited about that they were willing to throw millions of dollars at an idea. And I think there's something to be said in what people organically become interested in versus what a company wants you as a reviewer to be interested in. So it's made it more difficult in the fact that some of these products, they don't fit into necessarily a whole movement. They just might, like, there are 2 coolers out there, including the Coolest, that have a blender built in, but that's it. It's those 2, you know what I mean? And so that means on our end, we have to come up with new testing procedures for these, very individual products. But it makes it more interesting and more fun, honestly, just because you see things that you never would imagine. But then it's also interesting to see how the tide can change and what can make a product fall out of favor, especially when it comes from Kickstarter. And for me, a challenge I always have in my head is when to cover a Kickstarter project.
Yeah.
Because as a reviewer, I do not want, just like, let's say it's a product and I find it on Kickstarter and it's raised maybe like $1,300 and there's 5 backers or so, but they have a goal of like $70,000, dollars. But there's a chance that if I write about it at this early stage, that's going to influence people who may not have already known about it. And then I feel weird because I'm like, am I backing this product? So usually the side that I like to err on is projects that have already been funded, and not just like barely funded, but things that stand out, like the coolest, or things that, I'm seeing a lot of companies use crowdfunding not so much as a way to raise money, but as a way to raise awareness. It's kind of like a nice campaign. You get early backers and you can start to build a community. I'm kind of seeing it change, not necessarily, at first it was all these crazy ideas, and now it's becoming more streamlined ideas, but trying to build a community rather than building capital.
So I have to talk about this. We talked about it on the podcast. So, Joe, you wrote the most epic review of a product called Mellow. And I think it was a hard review for you to write because you ended up giving a fairly low grade. So, and I think this is a conversation for all of us to have. Like, you guys, when you have a product like that where it's tech forward and yet there's a problem that ultimately makes you have to kind of eviscerate it. Is this
kind of eviscerate?
Kind of. Talk about the process there.
So I think when that happens, when that kind of product comes across my desk and I'm committed to reviewing it, I have to I think I end up pulling all of my own voice. Usually I have a pretty strong voice in the stories that I write. I have opinions about things. And at that point, if it's really going sideways, I pull my voice out at least as much as I can. I start reporting the hell out of it because I want experts. I want to understand what's going on, understand what's going wrong, and then talk to experts who double and triple and maybe quadruple and even more check that I'm not off the mark.
Wilson, have you been in those types of situations?
Yeah, in fact, well, no, not necessarily. Not lately. Not in my last however many years, with the Journal and NBC before that. But I did get a Mellow around the same time Joe got one, and I tested it, and I just realized that there were issues that I wasn't going to spend the amount of legwork that Joe had. Joe went through to get it all out there. So I sent it back with I tried to do this. I sent it back with a note that if you printed it would have been 2 pages long, and it was saying exactly why I can't review this product. And I try to do that when it's a new technology, when I respect that there's a spark of innovation here that I don't want to snuff out, but at the same time it's not something that I think anyone should buy, and it might actually be dangerous. I mean, that's what Joe's article was about. It's true. I mean, there was a health risk involved. And obviously, when you're dealing with a health risk, you really have to. You can't err on the side of mentioning it without being very, very clear. And that's the thing. People don't read everything, right? If they see that we wrote about something, that might be all that they get out of that review. They might not even interpret. People skim. It's Instagram age. They're just getting the little bites. So.
Yeah, because you're all working for fairly well-known, big readership publication. There's a power in that. And it sounds like you do give a little bit of thought to how you wield it in terms of you're not necessarily going to write about the Kickstarter campaign with 5 backers because ultimately you may be what pushes it over the top, right? So You have to kind of think about it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think for me, as a reviewer, my allegiance is to the person who has to spend money on this. It's not necessarily to the company that built this. And I don't mean that in I hate these companies or things like that. But before I reviewed products, I was just a normal person. And I still am a normal person who is a normal type of cook who cooks dinner to make sure I have something to eat, and maybe sometimes my husband if he's being nice. And he's great. But at the end of the day, a lot of the products, especially the large appliances that I review, are big investments. I saw a meme on Facebook that was I finally understand why people on The Price is Right were so excited to win appliances, because these are thousands of dollars, and for me, I want to make sure that if you are going to spend this big chunk of hard-earned money on a product, that it works well for you. And that even extends on down to a product that might be $100. I think for me, it's important to remember that the average cook in America probably doesn't have like just a spare few hundred or few $1,000s sitting around to make their cooking lives easier. Yes, they do want some of the convenience that a lot of these products out there offer, but for them, this is an investment. And so when I test products and when I write reviews, I want to be as honest as I possibly can so that people are making the right investments. And so if I have to tell them, no, this isn't hard pass, then I will.
So I do want to take some questions from the audience because I think you guys are some folks that they probably want to ask some questions. We do have one I'll start with. Feel free to offer some more via Slido. How do you decide which products get reviewed?
We basically will survey our readers. We are not, we have no advertisers. It's also subscription supported. So we send out a survey and we say, are you interested in these topics? And if it doesn't get a high enough score, we don't do it. If they're interested, then we'll proceed. But it's not up to me 100%. Unless there's something that I can sort of argue it. But sometimes I'll just resurvey things till they bite. And we also buy all the products that we test. We don't accept samples or prototypes or do anything that's on Kickstarter. It's part of our policy.
How do you assess or assign a value to a connected experience with an appliance? I guess that's kind of getting to frameworks. If you guys, Ashley, I know you guys have a fairly regimented review process. Do you guys have like a scoring system for connected products?
With connectivity, it really comes down to ease of use and also ease of use across operating systems, because there have been times where, if one coworker has an iPhone, they'll be like, let me borrow your Android and vice versa to see what the app experiences are like on either one of them. And oftentimes, there are times when that experience is vastly different depending on platform, so we take that into account. It's not, I think for us, because we have different categories in which we review and our scores kind of fall into, that would fall under usability. And at the end of the day, like, you need to be able, it needs to be pretty easy. And as a reviewer, I think, okay, could I hand this to my mom? And would she be able to use it? And that's from just like an induction stove on down to an immersion circulator. If I gave it to my mother, could she use it?
So you guys review tools too. Like Joe, you'll review like knives, for example. What do you actually define as, and this could be interviewed, as technology versus just a tool, or are these oftentimes one and the same?
I'll go for something that has no internet connection, no technology in it at all, if it improves the life of somebody in a kitchen. And I'll also go for good design. I have a really soft spot for the Balmuda toaster. I had to bring that thing in from Japan or Korea. I had to get an alternator to make it work in my kitchen, but that thing made me happy. And was it the best toaster in the world? It was a neat toaster, but it was a really nice object. It was pretty to look at. It worked well, and it had a quality that made me smile. There wasn't a ton of tech involved in it, but I was really excited to review
Wilson,
that.
you're not going to do a knife review. Does your products have to be technology?
Well, I mean, I'm the personal technology editor, so right. That's.
But it's a knife technology, right?
No, the answer is we have an entire weekend section, which I contribute to when I feel like it. But they do the whole kitchen, everything, and they'll do appliances. They'll do but they do it for that audience, and it's a specific kind of affluent journal reader audience. So yes, they do beautiful objects, and if those objects are knives or cars or electric bicycles, it's there. It shows up. But I think we're the opposite of what Ashley was talking about with getting a criterion, having it. It's very much in the moment. You have a responsibility to get it right every time, but the criteria might change from week to week, depending on what you choose to talk about. So.
I love this question. And any one of you who haven't answered this, feel free. What's your favorite product by What's your favorite product made by a now defunct company?
Oh my God, I have one.
Go for it.
The Pantelligent. Does anybody remember that?
Pantelligent.
Okay, it was a smart frying pan, and I was like fully prepared not to like it, and it was a little bit ridiculous. But dang it, if it didn't work, it regulated the temperature of your pan essentially. So like my fried eggs were perfect, and like grilled cheese sandwiches. Like I made some really good grilled cheese sandwiches when I was testing it, and now I think it's gone the way of so many other tech startups, but it was actually because I think at the end of the day it's hard to pay $200 for a frying pan. Because I think this has come up earlier in panels. Sometimes just that cost, no matter how good a product is, you're still paying $200 for a frying pan. And I know some people are like, well, my fancy frying pan costs that much and it's so worth it. But I'm like, but I don't have $200 just to, spend on a frying pan. So, I really liked the Pantelligent.
I have one I'll just throw out. I mean, I really liked the Cinder. I don't know if you guys had a chance to use the Cinder. Like, I was really disappointed that they went under because I felt like that was a different product.
I kept trying to review that, and that kept fading away into the horizon.
That was one of the ones where I got it in, and I liked, I tested a little bit, but I realized this, and this is kind of another issue that we all think about, I think a little bit, is in addition to cost, it's a giant object on your counter.
Yeah, it's like an SUV on your countertop.
And it's like, can it do this? Can it do that? No, it can do this, but not any of these other things. Do you guys know what it is? It was like a giant
Two-sided,
George Foreman grill with like precision. Yeah, it was cool, although here's the real reason I didn't write about it. You couldn't cook any bone-in fish or meat with it because the bone holds the two metal plates and the meat shrinks down and stops touching it. And I wrote them, I'm like, it's weird, I cooked salmon, it came out uneven. They're like, no bones. And I'm like, I mean, how many people here would buy a steak machine that can't cook a bone-in ribeye? That's pretty weird.
I have to say, that's one of my biggest beefs with some of these products is do the people actually cook?
Oh my God, yes.
And not just asking chefs, get some normal people and then don't feed them the answers. Watch them struggle. There are things that don't make any sense the minute you actually get into the real world. And I'm sorry.
If I can piggyback on that, also get people who are not just hobby cooks, but like the day-to-day, I need to just feed myself and my family, and every day isn't going to be a steak night or a salmon night. Some nights it's going to be ramen. But how can I make my ramen better? You know what I mean? And so sometimes there's these products and these recipes, they're fantastic and they're delicious. But, I have a 5-year-old niece who does not like green beans anymore, but she liked them last week. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when I think about cooking for families and just that weekday working cooking, sometimes there are platforms that don't feel like it is made for the weekday cook.
I really notice on specific, especially like guided cooking apps, that they kind of forget to teach you how to do a sausage on their thing. How do you fry an egg? How do you do the really simple things, which are going to be the things that you eat the most, or have on a Tuesday night, or do a stir fry? Like, they might have like a creme brulee with mustard sauce and something really fancy, but they kind of forget Tuesday night. And I'd love to see more how to cook a sausage.
Well, this has been a ton of fun. We're running over time, so give these guys a big round of applause. All right. Thanks, guys.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the Smart Kitchen Show. Check out the Smart Kitchen Summit at smartkitchensummit.com. Find more content at thespoon.tech, and make sure to get more Smart Kitchen shows in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Until next time, this is Michael Wolf. Have a great week.